Shalom everyone and welcome back to my weekly video presentations. This Shabbos is the Shabbos of Parshas Pinchas. Who was Pinchas? He was the grandson of Aaron, who was Moses' elder brother. And Pinchas was really a nobody until he did a very, very dramatic act. What did he do? He saw that a Jewish prince was consorting with a Midianite woman, and they were doing it in public. And he looked around, he looked this way and that way, and he saw that no one was doing anything. And he asked Moshe, what is the halacha, what is the law for something like that? Is it permissible or not? And if not, what is the punishment? And Moshe said, I don't know. Can you imagine Moses himself saying, I don't know? And Pinchas took a spear and killed them both. It was an act of zealousness, not something we would recommend, but it was something that caused the priesthood to be in his family forever and ever. Now, there are several questions that could arise for something like this. First of all, how is it possible for Moses, the great lawgiver, who received all the laws and all the mitzvahs from God at Mount Sinai, not to know this simple law? Everybody knows that Jews are not allowed to marry non-Jews. How is it possible that Moses didn't know the law? He didn't know what it was. And it was given to Pinchas to determine what the law was. And how is it possible that Pinchas, in an act of zealousness, without asking the court or whatever to take him to court, rather he just went and he did this tremendous act? Why is it possible? How did he do that? Why did he do that? And at the end, why is it that the Torah commends him for it, for what he did? Certainly, any rabbi I know would never commend anyone if they did anything like that. Certainly not. And so what's going on? We see that sometimes it takes a person, one unique individual, to make that determination for themselves, to decide what is right and what is wrong. And if it's wrong, what should be done about it? How should it be done? Now, in those days, there was a great fear of intermarriage. The Midianite nation tried to assimilate the Jewish people and to obliterate the Jewish people, to destroy the Jewish people through intermarriage. They sent out women, beautiful women, out into the fields to entice Jewish soldiers, and they would bring them home and they would marry them. And this was something that threatened the very existence of the Jewish people. It was something very, very serious. So certainly this was something had to be done, and something radical had to be done in order to prevent this terrible scourge. And Pinchas, on his own, determined what had to be done, and he did it. And that is true for all of us. Very often we need to make those determinations ourselves sometimes and see what has to be done, and to go ahead and be a zealot ourselves. Sometimes it's necessary to be done. This last week, Israel went into Jenin, the settlement, the large Arab settlement, which is really not a camp. It was described as a camp or a settlement. It's not a settlement, it's not a camp, it's a city of tens of thousands of people. If you take a look at pictures of Jenin, it was a city. It's a city of something like 25, 35,000 people with apartment buildings and institutions and mosques and everything. It's a permanent city. But it's a hotbed of terrorism. And many of the acts of terrorism that took place in the last few weeks came from Jenin. So Israel, on its own, without asking the world community what to do, went ahead and went in there and killed all the terrorists, and to put a stop to what had to be done. And this is just something was necessary. The world came out against it, but interestingly, all of the Jewish parties, all of the various nations within the Jewish people agreed with it. All of the opposition parties agreed with it. It had to be done. Can you imagine what would happen if we were attacked by terrorists from a certain place? We would do something about it as well. Certainly we would. So this is what happened. and it was an act of zealousness. And it's interesting that Israel went into Jenin during the same Torah portion of the Parsha of Pinchas. Interesting similarity of what happened. The Alter Rebbe learns that we have to learn from the Torah portion of the week, and we learn from that week's Torah portion exactly what had to be done. So sometimes we need to do what we had to do, even though other people, our enemies perhaps even, will be opposed to it. Candlelighting in San Diego is at 7:42. I want to remind everyone that in 2 weeks, July the 29th, Shabbos Nachmu, the Shabbos right after Tisha B'Av, we are having a Shabbaton at our synagogue featuring the famous Rabbi David Toledano from Los Angeles. He's coming down. He's going to be speaking about relationships, laws between man and man, between man and God, and between man and himself. And that will start with a dinner on Friday night and a lunch on Shabbos day, and a talk in each one of them, as well as a talk later on Saturday. Also, on August the 27th, we're having Rabbi Gershon Schusterman, who just wrote a famous book called God, Why, which is becoming very popular lately, explaining what he went through in the loss of his beloved wife and how he dealt with that tragedy. And that'll be on August 27th. It'll be a lecture open to the community. I want to wish you all a good Shabbos, a very, very good Shabbos.